I would just suggest if you're weighing your political options in terms of who we're going to go with, I would suggest that if it already does it anyways, what you've suggested, and making be comfortable with putting the language in there is probably a better way to go.
I guess I didn't want to suggest that the language in there does exactly what you want. I said it's a compromise. It gives the school district the option, so they can decide.
I want to explicitly, the way that we wrote the amendment that was passed out of the Senate is what I'm interested in.
Listen, I spent a lot of time with your amendment. I know what it says, and again, I fought for it. But
I appreciate it. Well, I have yet to begun to fight for it. So
I'll bet you that if your no vote changes to yes.
Well, I think that at least sitting down is probably a pretty good compromise. All right, thank you.
You want to compromise between sitting down and yes, and we don't want to compromise.
All right, other questions for this witness?
We need more Gumbies, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Please leave your witness form along with the other ones. And anyone else to speak in favor? In favor. Anyone to speak against? Please come forward. Your witness form, introduce yourself to the committee, and proceed.
Mr. Chairman, most liberal chairman, members of the committee, out of agent on behalf of Missouri NEA. We already spoke, as we spoke on Senate Bill 613, the liability and safety concerns, and we're fully cognizant of the fact that 613 has been perfected and passed by the Senate, so I didn't intend to bring up those things, but we had process and governance concerns that were addressed in Senate Bill 613 by Senator Holzman's amendment. The original bill and the House bill speak to the school district. We like clarity. Right now, school board policies across the state say who can have concealed weapons on school grounds, and they say no administrator may authorize anything else. It has to be done by the school board. We like that clarity, that degree of public notice and engagement that makes sure that the decision is made at the highest level. So really the difference is between the Senate bill and the House bill is, does it have that clarity that those kinds of authorizations be done by the school board? That language addressed our process and governance concerns. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone else to speak against the bill? Anyone to speak against? Anyone to speak for informational purposes only? Seeing none, Representative Funderburk, it is the policy of this committee to offer you any final thoughts. If you would like to pass anything along before your departure, we'd be happy to hear.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say, and I definitely want to continue working with the members of your committee as well. I was just defending the House position as I was being asked to, with the understanding that we were going to have to come over here and then work with all of you as well. So it wasn't anything that was done out of spite or with ill intent, but just defending the House position. And just in closing, Mr. Chairman, I mean, my concerns here and what I'm trying to do is position Missouri citizens to make sure that they are protected by this state. Whereas in the situation as it exists today, if your rights are encroached by a federal agency, it is incumbent on you and you alone to go to court to challenge that agency, and it's been demonstrated by the raiding of the gun store in most recently in California, going all the way back to just a few years ago, Department of Interior coming in, Homeland Security, and raiding Gibson Guitars, not for a gun-related issue, but even Gibson Guitars finally had to make a compromise settlement with the federal government where no crime was ever finally alleged or charged, but because they just ran out of money to fight the federal government. So with the Second Amendment Preservation Act in place, Missouri citizens will be protected from encroachments by their government. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Very good. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you at the conference committee.
Thanks for the warning.
All right. Thank you, Representative Funderburk. That will call the hearing on House Committee Substitute House Bill 1339 to an end. And just for the benefit of the committee members, what we're going to do today is we are going to hold an executive session on this bill, and then we are going to just kind of have an open discussion about Senator Holzman's bill concerning physician authorization of CBD, just for everybody's planning purposes. I will tell you on the bill that we just heard, A substitute has been distributed to all of you that was distributed yesterday. Since then, there's been another substitute made, and the only difference between the substitute that you've had since yesterday and the brand newest one, in fact, I even kept the one from yesterday to use and just marked on it because the only difference was a set of brackets was removed that had been in there inadvertently anyway. So the newest sentence substitute is virtually the same as the one that we got yesterday. And I will also tell you, Senator Holzman, we will be happy to be open to your thoughts on the school protection stuff, whether we do it here in committee or whether we do it on the floor. I almost think it'd be better to do it on the floor, but it's your amendment, your language, so I will.
Well, I'm not prepared. I didn't know we were going to exact on this bill today, so I don't have the really drafted to the substitute ready to go right now.
Well, let's do it on the floor. So, I'll be friendly towards that. Yes,
Just a suggestion. Why don't we take the Senate perfected Senate bill, pass it out of committee and send it to the Senate? Since we're going to be going to conference anyway, let's just pass out the one that everybody's already voted for in the Senate, send it to the Senate floor, let it go through the perfection process, and then go to conference. Because we already know that one passed out of the Senate.
Yeah. That is a good idea and was actually my original idea, but there have been a couple of things that have been brought to bear since then.
That you believe are good things.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So that would be the plan of attack for today. So I would move we go into executive session.
second.
Seconded by Senator Shaw. And I will now make an adoption motion for the Senate Committee substitute, for House Committee substitute for House Bill 1439.
Second.
There is a second. Is there discussion on the adoption motion? See none, we'll take a voice vote on the adoption motion. All in favor of adopting the Senate Committee substitute for House Committee substitute for House Bill 1439, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it. All right, we have adopted the substitute. I now move to pass of the Senate Committee substitute for House Committee substitute for House Bill 1439. Is there discussion on the do pass motion? See none, we'll take a roll call on the do pass motion for Senate. Oh, did I get a second on the do pass?
Second.
Seconded by Senator Shaw. All right, now we will call the roll on do pass Senate Committee substitute for House Committee substitute for House Bill 1439.
Chairman Nieves,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Shaw,
Aye.
Senators Lively, Romine,
Aye.
Sylvie,
Aye.
Holzman,
No.
Nasheed.
The
No.
protection officer portion. You guys just have that.
I voted 5-2. You voted do pass Senate Committee substitute for House Committee substitute for House Bill 1439. All right, we will go out of executive session, and I would like to just kind of have an open discussion with the committee concerning Senator Holzman's bill. Senator Holzman, I think you have a Senate Committee substitute.
Yeah, we have a substitute, but we had to send it back. We're having a problem getting them to do the title the way that we want them to. I've asked, I can't be more explicit than I have been on what the title needs to be, and they keep coming back saying, well, we can't make the title that because of the content of the bill. And they finally agreed that if we added a provision in the front of the bill that outlined that content, then they might be able to change the title at that point. So we're working through that part of it. The other thing is we're going to define what ingestible is. That way, Mr. Chairman has indicated that at the end of the day, when we vote on this bill, he doesn't want to have anything that can be smoked at all, and that's why we've taken vaporizer out. Just to give you guys an idea of what we've done in the substitute, we've basically, the only thing that the physicians are going to be able to authorize is purchase of post-processed product. So possessing the flower, the stems, the leaves, any part of the plant will still remain illegal under the current statute. The only thing we're doing is saying that topicals, the oils, and the ingestibles, which is the post-processed product, it's not the actual plant, but what the plant turned into, that can be sold at the medical centers. There's one medical center for every 2 counties in the bill. Who owns and operates the medical center would be up to the rules promulgated by DHS. They would make the rules on that, and I'm open to if anybody has a suggestion on whether it should be a nonprofit or rather it should be a physicians provider group or whoever wants to operate the medical centers. But you would literally have all the growing done at the medical center. You would have all the processing done at the medical center. You would have the end product purchased at the medical center. So the only people in the state that would be allowed to handle the actual plant itself is the employees of the medical center in preparation for the medicinal distribution of it. This way, if you're still, again, you guys know my feelings on tax and regulate in general, but the chairman has asked me to try to craft a narrow enough bill to where it addresses the most physical ailments that the plant can address, and we talked about the senior citizens with arthritis that juice the flour in order to make the oils for their hands. What we would do is the medical center would do that for them and just sell the topical cream. The CBD oils that they use for Charlotte's Web, we heard that people take the flour and they boil it down on the water and they use the oil. That would be processed at the center, and you would only be able to buy the finished vial of the oil. This is an attempt to take that step to provide access for relief to those who need it and not open the floodgates for anybody else to possess something that can be smoked.
So and what I want to do right now, just so that all of you know, is, unless it becomes a free-for-all, we're going to kind of relax the Robert Rules type thing unless we end up having people talking over each other, because I just want us to talk about this in case we can figure out a way to navigate in the direction of a unanimous committee vote. I'm not going to ask anybody for their vote. I'm not going to put any pressure on anybody to vote a certain way. But this is the type of thing that if we could figure out a way to have a unanimous committee vote, it would send a message that I think may actually get the bill some floor time and maybe even passage. I want to protect any of our members. I want to protect members that are on both sides of the spectrum of this. We've got members of this committee who clearly, if we were voting on a bill to completely legalize marijuana, we won't mention any names, but they happen to be sitting at the two opposite ends. Oh, no. But so there are two members.
We call it tax and regulate.
There are two members of this committee who could, with the consent of their constituents, vote for a full legalization of marijuana. And then there are other people on this committee that are kind of in the middle, and then there are some people on this committee that, if they voted for the legalization of marijuana, they'd get tarred and feathered back home. And so my intent is to create a piece of legislation that will allow for those most extreme cases that we were all witness to during the committee hearings, particularly the children that have these unbelievable conditions that I think in all of our hearts, if we could pass a bill that allowed for a final product, what did you call it,
Post-processed product.
Post-processed product. In other words, we pass a bill that absolutely does not allow for the smoking of marijuana or the possession of smokable marijuana, then I think we've taken a step to the benefit of those kids and other people. So let's just kind of have a discussion about that. If there's ideas that other people would like to see put into the bill or taken away from the bill, if you feel like no matter what we do to the bill, you're not going to be able to vote for it, then that might be something that you can let us know. I know that senators don't typically ask other senators how they're going to vote, but if there was something, if you knew that there's just absolutely no way you can vote for this bill, if you would maybe figure out some way to pass that on to us so that we're not continuing to try to figure out new ways to make it more palatable, and we'll go from there. So I think Senator Schaffner had hand up.
Yeah. in my opinion, as a physician, the biggest chunk of benefit that we could do would be to allow people with cancer and are on chemotherapy to vaporize some marijuana to relieve them. If you know, I understand this kids, which are a relatively tiny fraction compared to this gigantic body of cancer sufferers, they need to be able to vaporize it. Are you dead set against allowing them to vaporize it?
I'm dead set against putting something out that can be smoked. I'm dead set against putting something out that would allow for 14-year-old Johnny to get into his grandma's medicine cabinet and roll a joint.
I'm sad that you feel that way, but I will have to say that if we put this out this way, at least next year we can come back.
And next year I'll be
And
gone.
fix it.
But before we get there, I mean, there's two bills moving right now. The CBD bill that Caleb Jones is carrying in the House, it only allows for intractable epilepsy to be treated. It only allows for CBD oil, and there's no mechanisms for how the individuals are actually going to get the product. It refers to the university as far as being in control of hemp, but there's no regulations on how families are actually going to get it. My bill differs from that in a couple of fundamental ways. One, it creates the medical centers and the regulations surrounding that on who's going to process it in the state. Because otherwise you're going to have it shipped in from out of state, and that's a whole nother set of complications with the feds because we're not making it here. The second thing it does is it allows adults who suffer from other debilitating diseases like wasting disease from HIV and AIDS, from suffering from cancer, chemotherapy, glaucoma, other illnesses that a physician can identify that this can treat. So that's different from the House bill. And then finally, we take the referendum clause. So because this is what the senator would call a baby step, we're not sending it to a vote of the people. And that does two things. One, elections are expensive, and it keeps all of that out of the equation. So when we make this decision, it'll just go forward without having a big public discussion. But it also, in 2016, when I believe the Tax and Regulate folks will put an IP on the ballot, the difference between what we're doing, or what I'm asking us to do today, and what they want to do is so far that it still makes sense for them to invest in trying to do that, and what we're doing is nowhere near what they want to do. So I just wanted to point out the differences. So our bill would allow adults to have access, our bill would allow it to be produced here in the state, and our bill would not have a referendum.
So we'll just kind of start this way.
And supply and stuff like that. I was just sitting here thinking maybe if this got through, no matter where it got through at, maybe pharmacists that are compounders, people like that, maybe individual pharmacists or privately owned pharmacies, maybe they would be an option to grow it and control it, and maybe even present it to the person. Because a lot of pharmacies are doing a lot of work, with pain management and different things like that. So,
And not every pharmacist or pharmacy does compound.
that's correct. It's pretty specific.
I'm kind of curious about the title issue. What's the titling and?
Well, the original title was pertaining to the use of medical marijuana. We then wanted to change the title to CBD Physician Authorization Act, because that's technically what it does, is authorize a physician to prescribe cannabinoids. And cannabinoids are the active ingredient that's in tetrahydrocannabinoids, which is there's lots of different compounds in there, but the ones that the Charlotte's Web uses are high in CBD, they're low in THC. The ones that a cancer patient would use to restore appetite is high in THC and low in CBD. So when we say CBD, it's abbreviation for cannabinoid. A cannabinoid is the actual active ingredient in the cannabis plant, which provides the medical benefit. So by us saying CBD Physician Authorization Act, we are literally saying we are authorizing physicians to prescribe CBDs, cannabinoids. And the problem is the legislative research is having a hard time understanding that cannabinoid is the same thing as marijuana. It's just a different way of titling it. It's a different way of calling it the same thing. It's just a smaller breakdown of what it is.
But that term is not in statute.
No, CBD is not,
That's
cannabinoid is not
I'm
either.
sure that's why they're struggling.
Yeah, and that's why we can define ingestible. So the senator said he was worried about people being able to smoke ingestibles. You can't. It's made up into a product. Dixie Elixir is an example of a company that has been founded since the legalization in Colorado. They do nothing but ingestibles. They don't do any smokable that I'm aware of. So they offer theirs in a variety of different delivery systems, everything from soda pop to hard candies to brownies is what traditionally would be considered. So you can't smoke it at all if you were in possession of it, unless you, unless you knew that it was labeled or whatever. It doesn't look like marijuana. It's not the actual physical bud or flower or stem or seed. So you cannot smoke it. And I understand where Dr. Troff is coming from, but I'm willing to take the step that we can take and move forward so these people can get relief. And then as Colorado and Washington laboratories of democracy start to demonstrate that society hasn't unraveled and that there isn't this big fallout, then maybe since we take this step, the next one will be a little bit easier and we start moving towards when adults can just choose for themselves what organic medicines they use, which is where I really want to go.
All right, anybody else have any ideas on it? So we're moving kind of slow on this, but.
And I also think that in the end, I talked to Representative Jones. He is comfortable subbing out his House bill because it's farther in the process, so he's already got it through rules. Hopefully we'll get it assigned to here. We can have a hearing on his bill here. It would be my intention to hopefully sub out his bill for the language that we all agree on. He has told me that if we can move that bill, whatever we agree on, out of the Senate and get it back to him in the House, he feels relatively comfortable that if the Senate passed it, he can get it passed in the House. So it's kind of up to us to craft what we believe the Senate will stomach taking this step. And I'll need all your help to do it. I mean, they're not going to want to hear from me. They're going to want to hear from 5 of you on how we arrived at this point, because a lot of people don't see how far we've come and how narrow we've gotten and where we started from when Chris Kelly filed the tax and regulate bill that looked exactly like Colorado's bill versus what I'm asking you guys to ultimately vote on is literally night and day. And unless you were part of that process, you don't understand how much effort it took to get us there.
Cool. Any other thoughts, discussions? All right, no further business before the committee.